Welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain, and we read them with our modern eyes and our modern perspective and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking at Kansas Farmer from the 31st of August, 1918, and this is a continuation of our series on interesting war items. This is part 4. This one appears to be slightly shorter than the previous ones, so hopefully it won't be too horrible. This seems to be like a mishmash of all sorts of random stuff about the war, like related to World War I, but there's a little bit of propaganda thrown in there. There's some bad press for different people. There's some racism. But at the same time, there's also some really cool stories that come out. So it's a huge mix-up of a whole bunch of different things. So let's see what there is today. Now the first part, like subtitle, I'm not sure if there's a typo in it. I can't quite decide. I think it's not a typo, but we'll find out in a moment. Because it seems like one you just can't possibly miss. When I first glanced at it, I thought it said learned boy at Chateau Thierry, but it doesn't. It says larned. Larned boy, or larned? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. At Chateau Thierry. So let's find out about him, yeah? A slight wound from a shell fragment and burns received during the campaign at Chateau Thierry early in June sent Tom Stewart of Larned, to American Base Hospital in southern France and gave him time to write home some very interesting letters, which are printed in the Larned Chronoscope? That's quite a name for a newspaper. In one of these, he says, "We got a chance to see what war is this time. The road we came on was simply lined with civilians going to the rear. It is certainly pitiful to see them, mostly old people, with all their possessions on wagons, carts, even wheelbarrows, and on their backs, and all tired out with traveling perhaps a couple of days. It was enough to make a man want to fight." Well, that's good that the sight of the refugees was enough to inspire him to want to do something, yeah? "We entered a town and cleaned it up with 24 men and found out to our satisfaction that Heine will run every time." Is that like a euphemism for a German soldier? Because I thought that they called them Krauts. Or was that World War II? Heine? Not sure. Obviously, I didn't live that back then. "Will run every time, and if in a tight place, it's Kamerad. Yeah? Kamerad. But if it's hard to hear them when they've been cutting you to pieces with machine guns." They had a machine gun company and 2 battalions in reserve at this town, so you see what fighters they are. They have a splendid machine gun, but are poor marksmen. Well, I heard that the machine guns back then weren't very accurate, so I don't know if it had anything to do with their marksmanship. But I have heard that they were very loud, and that seems to have damaged their hearing at some point. "In reserve, I helped carry back some wounded from the front lines. The Boche, yeah, would snipe you even at that." Now, what is that a euphemism for? Things you have to look up when you're reading old articles. Like, what's a Boche? A German, especially a soldier. Interesting. How come? Oh, okay, so that's a German word? In that case, it would be Boche. Like, I don't know. A slur, a term for Germans. No, it's pronounced Bosch. No, that's correct. It comes from French. Okay, my bad. Like, that's interesting. I've never heard that term before. But of course, I didn't live in France in World War I, so that's probably why. So the Boche would snipe you even at that. But they are not at all like that. Some dressed wounds of our men and let them return to their lines. Wow. "We were up against some of their crack troops, some of the Crown Prince's Imperial Guards, so I've decided I can whip the biggest Hun in the Imperial Army. We haven't been in the line as long as some Americans, but our division was the first to put on a drive and hold the ground gained. The Americans don't savvy this retire stuff. We've got plenty of formations for attack, but not one for retreat. The Marines have never been on the run yet, and I know darn well that the Fritzies can't make them do it. Okay. Okay, that's cute of you to say there. And he uses a lot of slang terms, which some of which are not very kind. So that's not one I would use. But then again, I wouldn't use Bosch either. That's a lot of where Americans were the best talk, and I don't particularly like that necessarily. But at the same time, if you are out at war and you really believe in what you're doing, then yeah, it's okay for you to think that you're the best. Go ahead. It doesn't hurt anyone or anything. We have some hot fighting up there, but I wouldn't have missed it for the world, and it's sure given every one of us a lot of confidence in ourselves. Clearly. The only thing we can't beat them at is this 6-inch stuff, and we have to leave that to the artillery, and they sure are doing it. A fellow can't fight back at a high explosive shell, and it's the hardest thing to endure continually. Makes sense. A fellow has got to have something to hang on to, or he goes to pieces, and some of them do. That's a heavy topic. I am thankful that my parents have taught me what that something is to be. Taught me what that Okay, I got it. I am thankful that my parents have taught me what that something is to be. When you lie in your little dugout and shells burst so close during a bombardment that they push you out about in it, you wonder what is saving you from the direct hit, and you've simply a divine providence to thank for it. So he said that some people are really affected by the shells and the loud explosions, and that you have to hang on to something, and he says that his parents gave him something to hang on to, and that was his belief in divine providence. So that is good that he has something to hang on to. I really wish he had used a little less slang, very derogatory terms. However, I understand that at the time that was quite common. So it's possible we couldn't have gotten one without something like that. But who knows? Oh, next one. Address letters carefully. In order to ensure prompt delivery of letters or packages addressed to soldiers in the American Expeditionary Forces, I think I said that right, the company as well as the regimental designation should be given. That makes sense to me. So it could be sent to this company, and then once at that company, then it's sent to this regiment, and then sent to that soldier. Yeah. Was that a problem back then? It's just like sent to John Smith, France, American soldier. Like, okay, great. Awesome. We're never going to find him, yeah. Mail for companies and other units is made up in this country and delivered in bundles to the French authorities to be forwarded to the railroad point nearest the organization and delivered to the mail orderlies of the particular units. These orderlies delivered to the individual addressee. If an insufficient address is given and the addressee is not known in the regiment, the mail must go to General Headquarters, where attempts are made to locate him. It may take weeks to secure the necessary information. Yeah, that's a common problem. I'm glad that they were telling people to be more specific. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Otherwise, it will take weeks for your letter to get there. Explosives still obtainable. I'm not sure I like this one already. Where are we going with this? The following statement has been issued by the United States Department of Agriculture. It appears that considerable difficulty has been encountered by farmers in securing explosives under federal licensing regulations. This office has been in conference with the Bureau of Mines, and they have been kind enough to make this suggestion: that in each locality where there is not a sufficient number of federal explosives licensing agents for the convenience of farmers who use or require explosives, that your state and county representatives recommend to FSP body, Assistant to the Director in charge of Explosives, Bureau of Mines, Washington, D.C., reputable notaries, public, or justices of the peace who are loyal American citizens to be appointed as local federal licensing agents under the Explosives Acts for the issuance of license in each locality. Wow, that was a lot of legalese. You're really sending this to the general public? I don't think half the people in the world could have read that. So what they're saying is that in order to obtain explosives for farming purposes, farmers If there's any farmers listening, will you please tell me what you use explosives for? Because the only thing I could think of is like blowing out a tree stump, because those are really, really hard to move. Maybe to move large rocks? Kansas wasn't terribly well known for having large rocks, though. I mean, maybe Colorado, but they don't get enough water to farm very well. I don't know. It seems a little odd, but mines I understand better. I know that they do controlled explosions all the time in order to break through the rock, because that's the most efficient way to do it. Hammering at it with a chisel is actually very, very slow and inefficient work. So, but it is very specific to one area. Anyways, but in order to obtain those explosives, if there isn't a licensed federal government agent nearby, since there aren't that many, then they could appeal to a notary public or justice of the peace and ask them to become licensed under the under the Explosives Act for the issuance of licenses. Interesting. Like, please get licensed so that we can have explosives. Post office clerks kept busy. The Post Office Department announces that more than 7 million letters from soldiers in France were received in the United States during the 2 weeks following July 29th. One ship arriving August 2 brought in 2,823,000 letters, and on the same day a transport brought 300,000 to another port. On August 5, 2,031,000 letters arrived on another ship. The entire mail was immediately dispatched, the last of it leaving before the expiration of 24 hours after the arrival of the ships in port. Well, I should hope so. You're just gonna let it sit around. Like, if it's mail, it needs to be continued to its next destination. Like, they're saying, like, that's a special thing. Did it normally take a week? Like, was it sitting in port for weeks? Like, that's surprising to me that wasn't standard procedure. Railway mail clerks at ports in France had sorted and distributed in mail sacks according to its destination in this country. 80% of this mail. Okay, the other 20% arrived at the ports in France too late to be worked up and was shipped to save time and worked at the New York post office. All right. Because the mail clerks in France had too much, and so they didn't want to miss the ship, so they just sent it off anyway, even if it wasn't properly sorted. Yeah, okay. Makes sense to me. The German Beatitudes. It is not known whether the following creed was composed by a German or a foreign student of Germanism. Germanism, huh? It's called German? Okay, whatever. It has the ring of genuineness. Oh dear. So in other words, they have no idea if this is true. Okay, grain of salt. It is not far-fetched or overdrawn. The military masters of Germany have acted upon this creed, and the German army, their disciples, has lived up to it. Oh dear. I haven't read it yet, but I can see coming some serious propaganda of like, we wish to own the whole world. Oh gosh. Okay. Here we go. This is going to be fun. You have heard how in olden times it was said, Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. But I say unto you, Blessed are the valiant, for they shall make the earth their throne. And ye have heard men say, Blessed are the poor in spirit, but I say unto you, Blessed are the great in soul, and the free in spirit, for they shall enter into Valhalla. Valhalla? Are you serious? Suddenly they're Norse? Like, what in the world? And ye have heard men say, Blessed are the peacemakers, but I say unto you, Blessed are the war makers, for they shall be called, if not the children of Jehovah, the children of Odin, who is greater than Jehovah. Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't want to get my countries mixed up, and I'm just going to fact check really quick. Norse, yeah. Odin is Norse. Valhalla, also Norse. So apparently Germans are Norse. No, they're not. No, they're not. They never have been, and that's a really, really weird thing to say. Okay, if this is genuine from anywhere, then it's it's Norse. Like, it's from followers of Norse mythology. Like, Odin was like the main god in Norse mythology, and Valhalla was basically their version of heaven. It's not exactly heaven. I've been corrected on this. Please don't come after me. I'm just saying it's like heaven. Okay? I'm not saying it is heaven. In case you are not aware, most Germans are either Lutheran or Catholic. They're Christian. It is a very Christian country. In fact, there are lots of holidays that are celebrated that are Christian holidays that are not celebrated in the US, for example, who are totally bashing them right here. For example, Pentecost. Pentecost is always on a Sunday, so the Monday after that is a holiday. You know, like, that's just one example, but there are a couple others as well that I could list off the top of my head, that they have work holidays where other countries do not, that are very Christian based. Like Maria's Ascension, yeah, is also a holiday. Corpus Christi is a holiday. They are very Christian. So it's very funny to me that they're like claiming that they're followers of Norse mythology. I don't know if that has a word that's connected to it. I apologize for my ignorance. Anyone who is more aware than I am of Norse mythology, please let me know. What is a follower of Norse mythology called? And yeah, correct. Give me any information you want to about Norse mythology. I am interested. I just don't personally know much about it. So I'm not going to pretend I do. But I'm also not going to pretend that anybody in Germany does either. I mean, I'm sure there are some experts in it, like there are everywhere in the world, but the general public does not follow it at all. It's very, very strange to me that they like threw that in there. Okay, that was an example of some serious misinformation. Serious misinformation. Like, that is completely false. Like trying to rewrite a passage from the Bible because to make it like according to somebody's imagination of what a German is. That's what it sounds like to me. And they're like, oh, Norse mythology, I'm sure they follow Odin. That one frustrates me. Odin, huh? Of course. I think this is just an attempt to other German people, to make them other than American people. You know, us Americans, and we're so righteous and we're so Christian, and, you know, they're different than us. Germans are also Christian and have been for centuries, probably longer than the United States, since it was originally a Roman colony. Anyways, moving on. Moving on. Allotments to dependents. Allotments by United States soldiers of a portion of their pay to dependents have increased in number from 10,000 at the beginning of the war to 800,000. For the month of May, these allotments totaled $5 million. 30,000 commissioned officers are allotting $1 million a month to their families. Non-commissioned officers and privates, $4 million. In addition, nearly $50 million of Liberty Loan bonds of the Second Liberty Loan will have been paid for by members of the Army and will be turned over to the purchasers during August, the payments having been made out of their allotment for that purpose. I think that the reason for that is because I believe they got hazard pay, you know, having been going to war, so they got paid fairly well, and they, you know, it's a devastated country where they are. There's not that much for them to spend their money on, so they're sending it home to their families. That's what most people did when they got extra hazard pay. So they'll take a little bit for what they want, and then they'll send the rest home to their dependents, either their wives and children or their parents if they're not married, maybe to their girlfriends who are waiting for them, also possible. Yeah, so I think that's why so much got sent home. Alrighty. How far behind the boys? One of Pershing's men returned from France was speaking. When I left for home, he said, the boys over there were feeling pretty blue because they thought that you here in America were not backing them up as you ought. We had a pretty bitter winter over there. The weather was the coldest France had known in years. Many of us without proper food and clothing. Some were even without shoes. None of us were complaining, though, but the feeling that when we were doing so much for you, you were not doing everything in your power to back us up, sometimes bit a pretty hard. So he returned home from France, and he said that he didn't feel like he had been very well supported by the people back home. I wonder why he felt that way. Anyway, we felt like the little Irishman felt in a YMCA hut one evening. A bunch of us had gathered there to listen to a speaker from America. During the course of his lecture, he said, "We in America are behind you boys to a man." Then my little Irish friend got up. "Yes," he said, "you're all behind us, all right. A long way behind. 4,000 miles. Are you that far behind the boys? If you are, move up closer. Make the boys in France realize that while the mileage may be great, it is easily spanned by your willingness to help." Okay. Yeah, I feel like this was justified. If the soldiers in France truly felt like they weren't being supported by those back home, then they're trying to say, hey, this is how people are feeling. At the same time, there are no practical suggestions on how to go about doing that. So I'm not sure what he's expecting people to do. Did they want them to go to France themselves? You know what I mean? Like, do you want them to send them care packages? Like, what do they want people to do from far, far away? And yeah, I can understand feeling that, you're so far behind us. You're 4,000 miles behind us. Yeah, I get that feeling. But at the same time, what else do you want people back home to do? They're doing their best to hold down the fort, so to speak, and just try to maintain things at home so that they have a nice home to come home to. What do they want them to do? So that's a nice bit of encouragement and in really large quotes, encouragement to do something, but with absolutely zero suggestions on what. Not sorry he enlisted. Never once have I regretted that I enlisted when I did, and money could not purchase the experience I have secured. The life is hard and trying. There are a few comforts and conveniences, but I really like it, writes Private L.A. Payne, a Kansas boy from France, as quoted in the Hutchinson News. My health is the finest in the world, my condition almost perfect. I have withstood the hikes and training like a veteran. I am determined that I'll go as long as the company holds together. Honestly, folks, you have no cause to worry. I have never felt as good in all my life as I feel now. The training has removed all superfluous flesh and is making me as hard as iron. Propaganda. It's possible that somebody did write this, in all sincerity, but the fact that this is what got published of all of the thousands of letters home, yeah, they're trying to make the war out to seem really good, like this is a positive thing, when I don't think anybody thinks that war is good. They could have published any letter from anyone. Could have published the one saying, I'm in a French hospital right now because I was too close to one of the exploding shells and it splintered my femur into 4 pieces. But no, they're not publishing that one. Which, by the way, isn't even a statement of how he felt about it. It's just a statement of fact. This one is all like, my condition is almost perfect. I'm in such good shape. Yeah, I'm glad you're feeling good and that you're feeling healthy and in good shape, but that's, it's not really interesting information. Oh, little boy, it's okay. All right, so that's our interesting war items for today. I am very disappointed in this German Beatitudes one. Other than that, I don't have any argument with any of the ones that were published. It's a little bit propaganda. It's a little bit trying to say how good we're doing. But that German Beatitudes was absolutely misinformation, and I don't like it. Here we go. So, regions of Central Europe inhabited by Germanic peoples and England were nominally Christianized between the 6th and 8th centuries, followed by the Christianization of Scandinavia in the 8th to 12th century. So that was later. Okay? Germany was Christian much earlier than Scandinavia was. However, elements of the ancient mythology survived through the Middle Ages in the forms of legends, adventures, and epic tales of folklore. Fragments can be found, for example, in historical accounts written about different tribes, such as Paul the Deacon's historical account of the Lombards, or the tales of Saint Willibrord, that's really hard to say, by Alcuin, who was likewise a theologian and advisor to Charlemagne. In relation to especially Old Norse religion and to a lesser extent Anglo-Saxon paganism, the written sources of early spiritual practices in Central Europe are of a very fragmentary nature. For example, the Mersburg Charms is the only pre-Christian text written in Old High German and contains mentions of the deity Fulla, Wodan, and Frigg. In other texts, including chronicles and historical representations, there are hints of the pagan religion, such as Charlemagne's destruction of Irminsul, reproduced by the Annals Reginae Francorum, or the invention of the Christmas tree by Saint Boniface. As paganism was marginalized by Christianity, parts of the pre-Christian religion continued in the folklore of the rural population. German mythology, therefore, survived in fairy tales, which the Brothers Grimm collected and published in their work. Elements of pre-Christian folkloric belief include the modern Scottish depiction of the brownies. I'm looking up Christianity in Germany, if I can spell Germany. I keep mistyping it. According to these church stats, Christianity is the largest religious group in Germany, with around 44.9 million adherents, or 53.9% in 2020. Of whom 22.2 million are Catholics, which is 26.7%, and 20.2 million are Protestants, which is 24.3%. Yeah, see, it's split. And people keep saying, well, Germans are Lutheran. Well, parts of Germany are Lutheran, but they're also very Catholic. All right. I want to see if they have some history. So paganism and Roman settlement, late Roman and Carolingian eras. So in the territories of Germany under the control of the Roman Empire, the provinces Raetia, Germania Superior, Germania Inferior, early Christianity was introduced and began to flourish after the 4th century. Although pagan Roman temples existed beforehand, Christian religious structures were soon built, such as the Aula Palatina in Trier. Then the capital of the Roman province Gallia Belgica, completed during the reign of Roman Emperor Constantine. During the Carolingian period, Carolingian, I don't know, Christianity spread throughout Germany, particularly during the reign of Charlemagne. Religious structures built during the Carolingian period include the Palatine Chapel, Aachen, that's on the border of France, a surviving component of the Palace of Aachen, built by architect Odo of Metz during the reign of Charlemagne. Territories of the present-day Germany, much like Europe, were entirely Roman Catholic, with religious break-offs being suppressed by both the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire. And then there was the Reformation, which started in 1517, with Martin Luther's 95 Theses, who, by the way, was German. Anyways, where was he living at the time? I'm trying to remember where that was. I wanted to say it's like in the central area, but I'm not sure it was. Speyer, that's kind of southish. And you have Augsburg. That's also not north. So I'm not sure why the north is considered more Lutheran and the south more Catholic. Who knows? Okay, the Holy Roman Empire became religiously diverse. For the most part, the states of northern and central Germany became Protestant, chiefly Lutheran, but also Calvinist, Reformed, while the states of southern Germany and the Rhineland remained largely Catholic. In 1547, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V defeated Schmalkaldic League? Sure. An alliance of Protestant rulers. I'm not sure how to say that. The Peace of Augsburg in 1555 brought recognition of the Lutheran faith, but the treaty also stipulated the religion of the state was to be that of its ruler. So whatever the Kaiser was, then that's officially what everybody was. Yeah, okay, I think that he was Catholic, if I'm not mistaken. But hey, but since that point, there were Protestants and Catholics in Germany. The country itself has been Christian since, what did they say, the 4th century? 4th century. And this is 1918, 20th century. So they're only 1600 years too late for, the Germans to be practicing Norse mythology. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry that bothers me so much, but it is just so blatantly false. But the fact that it was published in a newspaper meant that a lot of people believed every word. And that's what bothers me. I know that, like, in reading old newspapers and taking up this project, I was thinking to myself, it will be interesting to see them getting facts wrong just because of ignorance. And then we can go back and say, with our modern perspective, we know this and that and the other. But what I have discovered is that that's not necessarily the case. It's a lot of times that some group or writer has consciously decided to paint something or other in this light, knowing that it was probably false. And I don't know why people do that. That's what I don't understand. Why would anybody knowingly report false information, that nobody took the second glance at this article before it was published and said, hey, is this really true? Is this really true? Because I think that Germany's actually Christian. Well, if Germany is Christian, then that completely ruins their argument now, doesn't it? So, at least they're now correct, quote unquote. Anyway, I'm done with that. But seriously, you can't claim that a certain country follows a certain religion if you know for a fact that it's false. Like, I could go back and say, I claim that the United States is all Wiccan. Because look at the Salem witch trials. Yeah? That proves it? No, it doesn't. It was basically everybody that was persecuted in the Salem witch trials were not Wiccan. It's frustrating. Like, I have nothing against Wiccanism, by the way, for the record, but I'm just giving it as an example. Like, you can't claim that United States is Wiccan because the majority of the people in the United States are not Wiccan. And the same thing with this Norse mythology. You can't claim that Germany follows Norse mythology as a country because the majority of the people do not follow Norse mythology. I'm sure there's a small group of people who do, but I'm pretty sure that they are in the vast minority. So, I'm just saying, get your facts right, people. Do a little bit of fact checking. That wouldn't have even been difficult. You've never heard of Martin Luther. Like, he's a very famous person, just in case you didn't know. And he was German. So, there you go. All right. Done with that. So, I'm not going to ask if you enjoyed that. That was rather irritating to me, personally. I found that some of the articles were interesting, but I found that some of them were also abrasive, especially the misinformation. Get your facts straight, people. Don't report things that are false. I don't like that. Anyways, but I hope that you enjoyed listening to me rant and rave about it. And please come back for the next Microfiche time capsule. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.